here, she tends to speak her mind. And so I want to ask her 3 questions. Colette, as a practitioner, is the DBE program working? If not, why not? And are there revisions that could be made to improve the program's efficacy?
Well, thank you. Can everybody hear me? I've usually never been accused of not being loud enough. And I do appreciate the opportunity to come, especially as a non-government person, but kind of an insider, outsider, I'm not sure which, but certainly somebody who's devoted my entire legal career to the DBE program and other contracting affirmative action programs. Is the DBE program working? Well, no, that might be a little too close. And I think that depends on how you're going to define success. Certainly to the extent that we have lots of data around the country through many, many, many studies that when we have no goals, women and minorities get nothing. That seems to be quite clear. Does that mean that the program couldn't be improved? I think certainly it probably could, but I think it's important not to lose sight of the fact that while not perfect, it's certainly better than nothing, because when you have nothing, you get nothing. So I think it's important to focus on the positive to the extent that we can. And anybody who doubts how critical the program is just has to look at the dozens of state and local governments that have lost their programs in the last 20 years to see what's happened. You can look to California in particular, where I think, quite frankly, the ban on state and local programs has led to a very diminished, very weakened DBE community out there in a state with a population where you would think that there would be a lot of activity, and you really don't see it as much as I would have expected. So it is important to keep the program. Could it be improved? Well, yes, I mean, certainly, and I am very much encouraged by the recent changes to the program and encouraging recipients to do some things that address what I think are the weak links. And certainly I think from the perspective of the DBE community, and maybe to some extent I can speak for recipients, that the monitoring piece has been the single weakest link in the program. I always tell people there's nothing wrong with the regs. The regs are fine. You know, we're lawyers. We like to draft stuff. That's what we do. But we don't actually do anything. And it's the recipients and the contractors, the DBEs, the subs, that really are where it works or it doesn't work. And monitoring has been extremely weak a lot of places. Bob mentioned some of the cases. I'm from Chicago until about 2 months ago, and DBE fraud was a full growth industry there. We've had dozens of people go to jail for minority contracting fraud. And it isn't always just fraud, it's a lack of commitment. One of the things that I hear consistently from DBE liaison officers around the country is that they feel isolated, they feel unloved, basically, they feel unsupported, that often senior management either doesn't seem to care about the program or in some cases is actively hostile to it. The political power of state road builders is huge, and you all know that. I can get up here and say it. And so it can be very difficult sometimes to get an administration to really commit to the program. And one of the places that you look for that, I think, is what level of resources are given to the program. I mean, I see grantees that are running billion-dollar programs that have 1 or 2 people that are in charge of DBE. Well, I mean, you can't get it done like that. And people say, oh, we don't have enough money, we don't have enough money. When you look at what you're talking about spending as a percentage of the overall budget, it's pretty darn close to noise. And so if agencies really are committed, they've got to put some resources there. We cannot run this program through the Inspector General's office. That is not going to actually get DBE's work, build capacity, and positively impact minority communities. So getting resources, and Wilbur mentioned that too, not just at the recipient level, but frankly at the DOT level. The fact that I know almost everybody involved in it in some ways is not a good sign. That means there just aren't that many, and it certainly is not enough. When people talk about guidance, they want more guidance. Well, there's Bob, there's Joanne. I mean, there just aren't that many people to answer questions all day long. And so getting some more support for the program, I think, at the DOT level here in Washington, I think is really important to get that kind of resources. And to that extent, the DB community can be of some help to you, I think, because it is a political question how money gets spent and what it gets spent on. And so to the extent that the DBE community can go to their representatives, lobby on the Hill, AMAC that Wilbur mentioned earlier is particularly, I think, effective at doing that on behalf of FAA DBEs. We need to get out there and support you, because the DBE people at the local level don't feel supported. You may not either if you're here at headquarters. So try to use us to the extent that you can to get out there and be the voice that says we need resources to run this program. I think a couple other weak links are one of which is goal setting, and inconsistent goal setting and goals that are kind of all over the place. It disturbs me to see state DOTs with large minority populations in those states who have single-digit DBE goals. It does not seem to me to reflect the ultimate remedial nature of this program, which is to level the playing field and ultimately ask the question, what would DBE availability look like in a discrimination-free world? That's your but-for determination. And I just don't understand how in states that have 30, 40% minority populations and half the population is female everywhere, that you can tell me that if discrimination were truly eradicated and everybody had a fair shot, that still 92% of the dollars would be going to white males? How's that real? So I think that some of the goal setting is extremely weak. And of course now, to some extent, we may get the law of unintended consequences, which is now that you don't meet the goal, you have to explain why you didn't. And will that drive people to just lower the goals and they don't have to explain why they didn't meet it? So I think that's something certainly to watch out for. And then finally, you asked how could the program be improved, and I'm not sure. I think certainly more resources, better monitoring, these things that Bob and all those folks have been working on for a long time is important. But I'll tell you what I see, which is that the DB program that originally was conceived of by Perrin Mitchell, and for those of you who are old enough to remember him, and how this program came to be, was to try to address the continuing effects of slavery, and to look around now and see that the DBE program probably works the least well for black contractors, I think is something we need to address, and we need to address it directly. It isn't to say that other groups aren't experiencing problems. It isn't to say that other groups shouldn't be in the program. Please don't mishear me. But what I see around the country is huge levels of frustration from black contractors. And when you look at the utilization of black contractors in this program, it really is quite dismal. So my suggestion, and I think one of the things that's driving some of the frustration has been kind of a lack of willingness to some extent to say that. I sort of feel like, what's that comedian on TV, there I said it, that the program, we got an issue when it comes to blacks. And so I think that's partly led, for example, the lawsuit was filed maybe 10 days ago, something like that, by a group of black contractors in St. Louis, in the East St. Louis, Illinois area, against the Illinois Department of Transportation, asking for $652 million in damages, and alleging race discrimination. There's a Title VI complaint, there's a Section 1983 claim, I think there's a Title VII claim. It's a very broad-ranging attack, and we can have a conversation, I suppose, about its legal merits, but what I think it displays is a level of frustration that is out there. So my suggestion today, for whatever it's worth, is for the Office of Civil Rights to convene some type of task force or working group, I don't care what you call it, to try to address directly this question about how do we increase opportunities for blacks in the DBE program. And it's easy for me to sit up here and suggest other people do work. But I'm happy to work on it pro bono. I think it's that important. It sounded
like volunteering.
Yeah, I guess it was, wasn't it? That'll teach me to open my big mouth. But I think we've got to do something. And I don't have any magic answers in my bag. I'm not going to pretend that I do. But I do know that if we don't focus on it, we won't make any progress. And I think there are some things possibly we could do, but I think it needs to be a specific focus, not to the exclusion of anyone else or to be negative towards any other group, but a program that started out to deal with the effects of slavery is not working very well for the descendants of slaves. So I think we need to do something about that. There's my James. Mr. Posey likes that idea.
I wanted to say
say something, Colette, and I understand your remarks.